r/AskReddit by Redmond Dts. Delivery drivers of Reddit, what's the most WTF, NSFW, or hilariously awkward thing you've walked in on while dropping something off? Had a large order of pizzas going to a conference room of a hotel. Nothing too out of the ordinary until I opened the door and approximately 500 pugs turned their heads simultaneously at the man who just brought in yummy smelling food to the pug owners convention. I left and proceeded to have a good laugh. On the other end of the spectrum, there was a guy who ordered and was waiting on his porch steps when I got there. Couldn't help but notice his ball sack hanging out of his shorts. I left and proceeded to bleach my eyes. Used to be a pizza guy in my younger years. Weirdest thing that I ever encountered was delivering some pizzas to an older larger lady who used a walking stick. She had her grandson over for dinner. She opened the door, I read out the order, she gave me some winks, paid, then said, "You're getting me as hot as these pizzas, do you want to come in?" I stuttered a no, and her grandson, around 12 years old, looking horrified, quietly said, "Holy hell grandma." Back when I was like 23, one time I was delivering alcohol and a lady in a bathrobe opened the door. An older woman, very pretty though. She started acting kind of flirty. I smiled and just handed her the bag. Then she asked, "Don't you need to see my ID?" And I was like, "Nope, all good." Her smile dropped. I realized what I had done. I think she needed a win that day. I felt bad enough that I remember it about 6 years later. Oops. Back when I was 13, I had a paper route. In the United Kingdom, 99.99% of houses have a letter flap on the front door, and we would post the newspapers through the door. One day I had to cover another kid's route, and when I went to post the paper through one door, it just wouldn't go through. Normally I'd just leave it hanging out of the door, but it wouldn't even go in enough to stay there, and I thought I'd get in trouble if I left it outside the door. I opened the flap to see what was blocking it. It was a penis. The guy liked to put his dick in the letter flap when he knew the 13-year-old paper boy was coming. I never did that route again, and even quit altogether a few weeks later. I did speak to the kid that usually did that route, and he said that's normal, but the guy would regularly give him tips, so he was okay with it. I really wish I'd reported it at the time, but I was a kid and was scared I'd lose my job or get in trouble some other way. I'm not a delivery driver in any paying capacity, but my neighborhood is really close-knit, so we act as delivery drivers for each other whenever it's needed. One of the guys in my neighborhood, who lives a couple of blocks over, is an MMA fighter semi-professionally and all-around nice guy. He has 3 daughters with his ex-wife in a shared custody arrangement and loves them to pieces. He asked me to grab the takeout order he'd gotten for the girls and him for dinner on my way home. My practice is literally a block away from the restaurant, so it wasn't a huge deal. I texted him when I got there, and he told me to just come on in. When I walked into the foyer, I beheld one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I should give you a description of him, so you get an idea of what he looks like. He's 6'3", somewhere around 245-250 pounds, muscular jacked guy with a beard. In the living room, he and his daughters are having a tea party after playing dress up. The girls had done his makeup, braided his beard, and he was dressed in a Glinda the Good Witch type dress. Yes, it was pink, and yes, it was in his size. It was so unexpected that it was hilarious to me, and I burst out laughing. He didn't take offense because he realized how funny it looked to walk in on that. It was just so incongruous to what I expected that it bordered on the absurd to me in the moment. There's a sweet postscript for this moment. We had a neighborhood barbecue the next Thursday night, and over a few beers we got talking about it. He offhandedly mentioned that I should see his Ariel from the Little Mermaid costume. It turns out that he owns matching, or as close as possible, dresses or costumes to his daughter's dress-up clothes. I've seen the whole closet he has dedicated to it. That's one of the most wholesome things I've ever encountered in hindsight. I used to deliver propane in northern Michigan. I was doing a delivery to the staff building of a hotel where Jamaican women normally stay during the vacation seasons. I walked into the side door to get a signature for the delivery, and there stood 3-4 topless Jamaican women. I blushed, turned my back, and started to quickly apologize. Then I heard an older woman laughing, and she said, "What's the matter, boy? Haven't you ever seen boobies before?" I told my boss about it. When I got back, he laughed his ass off. I delivered pizzas while I was at uni. On my very first night working the job, I got a delivery to a place pretty close to the pizza shop, walking distance, and was really trying to work out why. I knocked on the door with the pizza, and a completely naked man answered. He couldn't cover himself up fast enough, and was extremely embarrassed. Turns out the woman I worked alongside was his wife, and the only delivery driver up till this point. I actually ended up as pretty good friends with both of them. We still catch up regularly. Anytime pizza is planned or mentioned at all, I make the better whip your dick out mate joke. Had a guy answer the door in nothing but a sock on his dangle, acted like it was totally normal. Took his money and left without even mentioning it. Another time had a woman at the door, hiding behind mostly, who I'm 90% confident was being banged. Used to work for a small courier service, mostly meds and legal documents. One night I'm dropping off an envelope at this guy's apartment. Doors cracked open, lights are red inside. Not dim red. Like horror movie red. I knock, say, "Delivery for James." From inside I hear, "Come in. It's feeding time." Dead serious. I noped out so hard I nearly left skid marks in the hallway. Called dispatch and made them mark it undeliverable. Next day the guy calls and goes, "Sorry about the Dracula vibe. I was setting up for my Tarantula's TikTok live stream." I don't even know what part disturbs me more. The fact that he said it so casually, or that the tarantula apparently had fans. I used to work supermarket home delivery in the United Kingdom. I had my regulars who I used to deliver to every weekend on my shifts, including a lovely old man who we'll call John. John lived in an upmarket retirement apartment assisted living facility in a small leafy village in the countryside. He was probably in his mid-90s and would always leave a note on the order, to knock on his door, then come and to put the shopping in the kitchen for him. When I arrived, he'd just shout "come in," and I'd open the front door. Usually, he'd be sat upright in his wheelchair in the living room, or lying in his bed reading a book. One day, I went along to deliver John's food shop as normal, buzzing myself in on the intercom at the front doors, and wheeling my sack barrow with the crates of shopping around the corridors, till I got to John's apartment at the end of the corridor on the top floor. I noticed when I parked the sack barrow outside the front door, that the door wasn't closed like normal, it was ajar. I knocked anyways, and heard John say his usual "come in," so I proceeded to pick up the first 3 or 4 bags of shopping, and opened the front door. It's important to note here that John's bathroom was immediately on the left side as you came into his small retirement apartment. As soon as I got through the front door, I saw to the left that the bathroom door was fully open, with John sat in his wheelchair naked as the day he was born, facing the doorway. His assisted living carer was there to give him his daily shower I guess, and was midway through scrubbing his balding head as I walked through. Everything was out on show. I was quite shocked, not expecting to see a fully nude bloke in his 90s at 8 in the morning, but out of British politeness, I just said, "Oh morning John, still want the shopping left in the kitchen?" And he said, "Yes please mate." So I continued as normal, trying not to look across into the bathroom every time I had to go back to the sack barrow to collect more shopping bags. At the end of the delivery, I asked John if it was alright if I signed for the delivery on his behalf, as I could see he was a bit preoccupied with his shower. It was never mentioned again on the subsequent deliveries I took to John, till I eventually quit the job a year or so later. Not necessarily walked in on, but the most hilarious thing I'd laid eyes on at that job. Knock on this guy's door, he answers. I scan the parcel. I hadn't looked at the name on it yet, but when it scanned through, the device said it was addressed to Big Dick Dave. Could not hold in my laughter, so showed the bloke too, and said, unique name, so he bursts out laughing as well. Went as red as a tomato. Explained that his mate gets things delivered to his house cause he works abroad a lot, and puts a new daft name on every delivery lol. I delivered to a hotel, and a lady answered the door in a very skimpy outfit. From inside the room, I hear a guy yell, hurry up, that's not what I'm paying you to put in your mouth. Work as a postal carrier, and back around 2013, 2014ish, Amazon started their Amazon Sunday delivery service with the USPS. This was a time when Sunday delivery wasn't a thing, like it is now. People would do a double take or stop us on Sunday inquiring what the F we were doing, or straight up call the cops thinking someone stole our signature box truck. Anyways, I was walking a package up to the door of a secluded upper class home, and a woman called out a guy's name from the garage. Walked casually out naked, saw me, and screamed. She screamed, I screamed. Someone who I assumed was her husband bolted from somewhere and saw me. Yelling who the hell I was, while I was yelling I'm a letter carrier. Was stuck there for at least 15 minutes trying to show them my credentials, the fact that I'm in a mail truck, and had a package addressed to him. To this days, I can't get the image of those boobas out of my head. I delivered live orchids for a greenhouse as a part-time job. They had to be physically handed to the customers, because I was not allowed to leave them outside at all. One place I went to was way out off the main roads, which is saying something, because I live in an extremely rural area. My normal grocery trip is half an hour, just to get to the closest store. Anyway, I find the address, and the driveway disappears into a forest, and it's a good half a mile of gravel twists, before I see the house. It's dug into the side of a hill looking over a private lake. Like there's just a dark hallway going back into the dirt, no windows, no doors, no visible structure, just a concrete rectangular tunnel into darkness. I had called the customer beforehand, because I learned the hard way that cold delivery means I'm driving back with flowers and wasting time and gas, so I just shouted, hello, delivery from greenhouse, and stood there kinda taking in the scenery. I shouted again, and this time got a response. The guy pokes his head out from a door that I swear was not there when I pulled up. About halfway down the tunnel, like he just popped out of the shadows, and goes, oh hey there, I didn't hear you pull up. I hold up the orchid and explain he has to sign for it, and he's like, sure. And steps out of the darkness to reveal he is complete naked and covered in mud. Brown paint? I have no idea. Just swinging free and dripping gooey brown sludge as he walks out into the sunlight to take his delivery. Leaves a huge brown smudge on the invoice and says, you wanna come in for a beer? Even if I didn't have to drive way back out of there, no way in hell was I going into the concrete tunnel of darkness with nudie mudman. Nope. I used to deliver off-site catering for a deli. Mostly chicken parm hot trays and 6-inch heroes, that kinda thing. Well, it wasn't usual for people to send food to homes after funerals and such. One day I was sent to a funeral. It was a lot of food for a funeral. Like $600 worth of food. So, get the house, and it is absolutely packed with beautiful people, and a good percentage of them are laughing and sunning topless by the pool. I should add that this wasn't some huge mansion in the Hamptons. This was a middle-class home in Massapequa, New York. Almost all of the guests at this part were all under 35, and they were all having a blast. I thought to myself, maybe this isn't a funeral. But there was the memorial picture easel with the old mist in the living room. Most bizarre funeral I have ever seen. But God, I hope mine is like that. Everyone I know celebrating the life they had with me. Either that, or the dude was a total dick, and they were celebrating. I was a pizza delivery driver for a few months a while back. Had a couple open the door for me, him in just his boxers, her in just her bra and a bright pink thong. They were both really sweaty, and it was obvious that I interrupted their fun time. The girl told me I was earlier than expected and smiled. That couple ordered a few more times after that, every time opening the door in underwear, hers getting more revealing every time. After the third time, they asked me if I wanted to join them after I'm done working. I declined, because I was in a relationship at the time, but still think about that sometimes. I delivered a package to a house and needed a direct signature, so I rang the bell. The front of the house has a lot of windows, so I could see her excitedly running to the door, but she was naked. When she answered the door, she was very disappointed and said, "I thought you were someone else." I once delivered plumbing supplies for a pretty big national company in the United Kingdom. I knocked on the door and was greeted by a lady, probably mid-30s, but looked a lot older, rough paper round I think. She answered the door with nothing but a bathrobe on. I passed the parcels to her, she put them down just inside the door, and every time she bent down, she flashed me her tits. I tried not to look, but was kinda hard not to. She then says, "Oh, like what you see," with a huge smirk on her face. "No thank you, please sign for your parcels and I'll be on my way," I said. I got home and my girlfriend, now wife, said to me, "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I still don't think I have recovered 8 years on. I know a food delivery driver who dropped off an order recently, and the woman who answered the door said, "Thanks, I'm so stoned," and then looked mortified as she realized the last part was not an internal thought. Dropped off a package at a friend's house. It took him several minutes to reach the door. Turns out he'd been camping at the backyard and his sleeping bag zipper jammed, so it took him a while to wriggle to the front door and answer the doorbell in the guise of a giant green slug. Worked as a courier for 4 years roughly. Have many stories, some shorter, some longer. I remember rolling up to a small house with the second floor windows open. You could hear a couple having a lot of fun up there. Unfortunately, I also had a package to be delivered. So I ring the doorbell. A minute later, after the sounds quiet down, a shirtless guy pops his head out the top window. I show him the package. He says, "Just a sec." Runs downstairs. Opens the door in nothing but a towel, signs for it, and I get going. I wasn't waiting around to hear if the fun continued, but definitely made me chuckle. Not a driver anymore, but a supervisor for industrial laundry company. One of my drivers had an early morning delivery to a motel owned by an elderly woman. We owed her some sheets and pillowcase due to a shortage in the previous day's delivery, and early next morning was our only time frame back in the area to make it up. We worked that out with her. She answered the door at 6:30 AM, butt ass naked and holding a knife. Told our driver that if he ever showed up that early again, she would stab him. Took her delivery, and that was that. Gotta love rural West Virginia lol. When I was 10, I did a paper round. I was riding down an alley where the residents had their garages. A garage door was open and a woman was bent over looking for something under the front seat with just a bathrobe on. It was the first time I'd seen a kitty in the wild. I was shocked by how much hair, but I suppose it was the 1970s. Well, in my 10-year stint of delivering pizza, I'm tied between the two naked hookers in an old man's house with a bunch of high school kids staring from across the street playing basketball, and the weekend party house of gay dudes in their underwear offering me a blowjob as a tip. My brother was a pizza delivery driver for a few years. A man ordered a large pizza and tipped $1. When my brother showed up, the door was ajar and a note hung from it. The man had killed himself and wanted my brother to call the cops. I delivered pizzas to a porn shoot in a hotel suite. Sadly, they really did just one pizza. I used to do grocery deliveries for a few years, and the two incidents that still stand out to me to this day are: Delivered to an elderly couple on my first shift. Was instructed to knock on the door and wait for wife to answer the door. A few minutes go by and I hear nothing, so I knock again. I hear some mumbling, shuffling of feet, and the front door swings open, revealing an elderly man, trousers and underwear by his ankles. His wife comes bustling in, flustered, and says, "For fudge's sake, you know you're not meant to answer the door in the middle of a piss." And then turns to me to explain, he's blind, as if that was the reason for him answering the door with his trouser down. Delivered to a woman who opened the door, panicked, slammed the door shut, and asked me to wait a few minutes. She opened the door a few minutes later in a dressing gown, asked me to take her shopping through to her kitchen, but avoid looking around when heading down the corridor. Okay, weird, but that's fine. Anyway, I was curious, snuck a look walking past the living room, and caught a glimpse of some very professional looking camera equipment, softbox lighting, etc. And several naked people stood around. Safe to say I was ushered out of there ASAP. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.